She was sitting alone at 1 a.m., lost, silent, and ignored, until a teenager on a busted bike changed everything. It was 12:47 a.m. when Malik turned the corner onto South Bishop Avenue in Fort Wayne, Indiana. His shift at the 24-hour Quick Mart had ended late. Again. That old temporary schedule was starting to feel permanent. The air was thick and still, like the whole block had paused to catch its breath. Streetlights buzzed faintly above, flickering the way they always did on this side of town. A few porch lights were still on, most of them automatic. Nothing moved except Malik and the wheels of his rusted BMX. His book bag bumped against his back with every pedal. Inside, a squashed peanut butter sandwich, his physics notebook, and a pair of scuffed-up work gloves he forgot to take off earlier. He was halfway home, head down, legs aching, when he saw her. At first, he thought it was a pile of trash near the shuttered pharmacy, maybe a bundle of blankets left by someone unhoused, but something about it didn't sit right. As he got closer, he hit the brakes, slow, steady. It wasn't trash. It was a woman, an old white woman. She was sitting on the edge of the curb, knees together, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her coat, what looked like expensive fabric, now stained at the sleeves, hung awkwardly off her shoulders. Her shoes didn't match. One had a heel, the other looked like a hospital slipper. Her hair was gray and tangled, and her chin trembled with each breath. Malik glanced down the street. No cops, no cars, just him, her, and the sound of wind scraping dead leaves across the sidewalk. He looked back. She hadn't noticed him yet. He could have kept going, maybe even should have. You hear stories, you know? People trying to help and getting hurt, or blamed, or worse, but he didn't. He hopped off the bike, one foot still on the pedal, and cleared his throat softly. "Ma'am, you all right?" She looked up, startled. Her eyes locked on his face, pale blue, wide. Not scared, not exactly, just lost. Like she was still figuring out whether he was real. "I don't know where I am," she said, voice dry as paper. Malik shifted his weight, glancing around again. Still no one. The gas station 3 blocks back had a night guard, but that felt too far. He looked back at her, the way she blinked slowly, her mouth trembling like she was trying not to cry. She wasn't drunk. This wasn't drugs. Something was wrong. "Okay," he said, gentler now. "It's all right. You're safe. Do you live around here?" She shook her head. I don't think so." "You got a phone? Or ID?" She reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a cloth handkerchief. "That's all." Malik exhaled through his nose, rubbed the back of his neck. "Do you remember your name?" Silence, then a whisper. "Margaret, I think." He crouched beside her, careful not to move too quickly. "All right, Ms. Margaret, I'm Malik. You hungry? Thirsty?" She nodded faintly. "I think I had tea earlier, or maybe yesterday." There was something almost childlike in the way she spoke, like every sentence was a question. She didn't even look at him like most people did. She wasn't judging his skin or his hoodie or the grease on his jeans. She just looked tired. He reached into his backpack and handed her a bottle of water. She took it with both hands, like it might vanish. She drank slowly, and when she finished, her shoulders dropped just a little. "You cold?" he asked. She didn't answer, but he could see the goosebumps on her arms. Without thinking too hard, he pulled off his hoodie and draped it around her. "Better?" She nodded, just once. Now came the hard part. What do you do with a lost old woman on a sidewalk at nearly 1 in the morning? He could call 911, but something about that didn't sit right. Not yet. Not until he knew more. He looked at his bike, then at her, back again. Then he spoke, quiet but firm. "My house ain't far, 5 minutes by bike. My grandma's up late sometimes. She'll know what to do. You want to come with me?" Margaret looked at the street, then back at him. The corners of her mouth twitched, uncertain. "I don't have money," she whispered. Malik chuckled, shaking his head. "I'm not a cab, ma'am. You don't need money. Just trust me." She didn't move at first. Then slowly, she placed her hand in his. He helped her stand. She was shaky, but strong enough. He guided her toward his bike. "I'll ride slow," he said. "You good sitting on the back pegs?" "What's a peg?" Malik smiled for the first time that night. But just as he helped her onto the bike, a shadow moved near the alley behind them. Malik's head turned fast toward the alley. A cat darted out, knocking over a glass bottle that rolled into the street. He exhaled, shoulders tense, then looked back at Margaret. "You good?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. She nodded slowly, gripping the frame of the bike like she wasn't quite sure if it was real. Malik lowered the kickstand and guided her gently to sit on the rear pegs. He held her hand the whole time to keep her balanced. "You ever ride double before?" She blinked. "Double what?" Malik smiled again, almost chuckling. "Never mind. Just hold on to my shoulders." He pushed off, pedaling slowly down the cracked sidewalk. The bike wobbled at first under the added weight. Her knees tapped his hips with every bump. He stayed off the main street, cutting through back roads where the city's silence hung heavier, more honest. Margaret didn't speak for the first 2 minutes. Malik glanced over his shoulder. "You okay back there?" "I think so," she said. Then after a pause, "This isn't a taxi, is it?" "Nope, just Malik's Midnight Express." She giggled, a short, surprised sound, then quieter. "I used to ride bikes. When I was a girl, my brother had a red one, with a bell. You remember his name?" She was quiet for a long beat. "I think it started with an R." He kept pedaling. They passed a boarded-up laundromat and an old Baptist church with a sign that hadn't changed since Easter. Malik turned down McClellan Street, swerving to avoid potholes and tree branches. The neighborhood got darker here, less streetlight, more silence. Margaret whispered, "I think I had a husband." He didn't say anything yet. Just let her talk. Tall, wore glasses, always said I walked too slow. "Did he love you?" She looked up at the night sky. "I think so," she said. They rode in silence for another minute. "You got family?" she asked him suddenly. "Yeah, Grandma raised me. My mom passed when I was 10. Dad, I never knew." Margaret gripped his shoulders a little tighter. "I'm sorry," she said. "It's okay. My grandma's solid. You'll like her." The houses started changing as they rode. Less peeling paint, more trimmed lawns. Still modest, still working class, but steadier. The kind of block where people waved if they knew you and kept their distance if they didn't. Malik's thighs burned by the time they turned onto his street. He stopped in front of a one-story brick home with a leaning chain-link fence and 2 plastic chairs on the porch. One of the porch lights was still on. He helped Margaret off the bike carefully. Her knees buckled for a second, but she caught herself. "You sure she won't be angry I'm here?" she asked. "Not if you tell her what kind of tea you like." That got another faint smile out of her. He opened the gate, wheeled the bike in, and guided her up the short steps to the porch. He knocked softly. Footsteps. Then the door creaked open. A woman in her 70s stood in the doorway, wearing a thick robe and a satin scarf over her hair. She squinted. "Malik? What in the world? I brought someone, Grandma." His grandmother's eyes moved to Margaret, who was trying to straighten her coat. Her lips parted slightly, eyebrows drawing close. "She's lost," Malik said quickly. "I didn't know what else to do." His grandma didn't respond right away. She looked at Margaret, then at Malik, then back again. Finally, she stepped aside. "Bring her in." They walked into the living room. Margaret sat on the floral couch like it was a museum piece. Malik's grandma turned on the lamp, then vanished into the kitchen without another word. "Your house smells like vanilla," Margaret said. "Grandma bakes when she's anxious," Malik replied. A moment later, his grandma returned with a warm mug and handed it to Margaret. "Chamomile," she said. "Didn't know what you liked." "Thank you," Margaret whispered, tears welling up again. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I think I got turned around." "What's your name, sweetheart?" Margaret stared at her hands. "Margaret, I think." His grandma's face changed, subtle, but something clicked. "Let me make a call," she said, disappearing down the hallway. Malik sat beside Margaret. "You okay now?" She nodded. "You're not in trouble," he said. "We just want to help." But before he could ask anything else, his grandma came back, this time holding the phone to her chest, eyes wide. Malik stood up as soon as he saw his grandma's face. "What is it?" She stared at Margaret for a moment before speaking. "I just got off the phone with the police dispatch. They've been looking for her for hours. Apparently, she walked out of some kind of facility across town." Margaret tilted her head, eyes glassy. "I did?" Yes, ma'am, Grandma said gently. They're sending someone over. Malik blinked. What kind of facility? A private memory care place over in Westfield, 5 miles from here. He turned to Margaret. You walked all that? I don't remember walking, she said, looking at the tea in her lap like it might offer answers. I remember there was a window open. It smelled like gardenias. His grandma sat beside her. Do you know who you are, sweetheart? I'm Margaret. That's all I know right now. Malik watched as his grandma reached over and gently took Margaret's hand. That wasn't something she did often, not with strangers. You did the right thing bringing her here, she said to Malik. He nodded, still trying to process it all. 5 miles, a memory care home. How had she made it this far without anyone noticing? He sat back down across from Margaret. Do you remember anything else? He asked. Like who to call? Any family? She frowned. There was a man with a navy tie, always smelled like spearmint. He used to drive me places. That might be your son, Grandma offered. Maybe. Her voice was fragile. I think I hurt his feelings last week. I just don't know why. The house went quiet again. Outside, a car passed slowly, headlights painting stripes across the curtains. Malik leaned forward. You know, back there, before we got on the bike, you said something about tea, how you weren't sure if it was today or yesterday. She looked at him. Why'd you say that? Margaret took a long breath. Because I was waiting for someone, I think. But nobody came. The words hung in the air. Malik didn't know what to say to that. Neither did Grandma. He rubbed his hands on his jeans and stood. Be right back, he said, heading to the kitchen. He opened the fridge, pulled out a slice of sweet potato pie wrapped in foil, and grabbed a fork. Back in the living room, he held it out to Margaret. You said you were hungry, right? She smiled and took it with a soft, thank you. They sat in quiet again while she ate. Grandma disappeared down the hall, probably to call the dispatch back or pray or both. Do you always help strangers like this? Margaret asked softly. Malik looked at her, surprised. No, not really. Why me? He shrugged. You looked like my grandmother when she gets overwhelmed. Not the part about being white, just the eyes. You didn't look dangerous. You looked scared. Margaret looked down at the pie. I was. They heard a car door shut outside. Grandma came back in. They're here. Margaret froze. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. It's okay, Malik said. They just want to get you home. But what if I don't remember them? Malik crouched beside her, same as he had when he first found her. Then let them remind you. But only if it feels right. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. A knock at the door. Grandma opened it. A uniformed officer stood on the porch with a younger woman beside him, maybe mid-30s, wearing jeans and a lanyard. Her face looked tight, panicked. Is she here? The woman asked. Grandma stepped aside. She's inside. She's safe. The woman rushed in, kneeling beside Margaret. Oh my God. Ms. Whitaker, we've been searching for you since 8 o'clock. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Margaret blinked slowly. Do I know you? It's me, Aaron. I'm your case manager. From Willow Path? Margaret didn't answer. The officer spoke next. We're glad she's all right. Do you mind if we ask who found her? Malik raised a hand. That'd be me. The officer gave him a look, not judgmental, just surprised. You brought her here yourself? On my bike. The woman turned to Malik. You brought her 5 miles on a bike? Yup, she rode the pegs. The officer laughed under his breath. That's a first. Margaret looked up at Malik again. Thank you for not leaving me there. You're welcome, Ms. Margaret. She reached out, gently cupped his hand in hers. You made me feel like I mattered. Malik felt something tighten in his chest. She wasn't saying it for show. She wasn't saying it because someone told her to. She meant it. The officer and Aaron helped her to her feet. As they led her toward the door, she paused. Do you think maybe you could visit sometime? Malik glanced at Grandma. She gave a slow nod. Sure, he said. I'd like that. But what Malik didn't know yet was that this one bike ride would follow him for the rest of his life, and not in the way he expected. 2 days passed. The story didn't go viral right away. In fact, Malik thought that was the end of it. He figured Margaret, Ms. Whitaker, apparently, was back at her memory care facility, sipping tea and catching glimpses of the past when they decided to show up. He thought he'd done something good and quiet, something nobody would notice, and that was fine. But the next afternoon, his grandma came back from the corner store gripping the day's edition of the Fort Wayne Sentinel like it was on fire. "You're on the front page," she said, dropping the paper on the kitchen table. Malik looked up from his cereal, spoon in midair. "What?" She tapped the headline. "Teen helps lost elderly woman found 5 miles from home. He saw me when no one did." There it was. A photo someone must have taken outside the house, a grainy shot of him standing on the porch with Margaret, still wearing his name tag from work. His phone buzzed, and buzzed again, and again. Texts, missed calls, social media tags from people he hadn't talked to since elementary school. Grandma didn't look thrilled. "I don't want reporters coming around here," she said, pouring herself coffee. "People start poking around for the wrong reasons when money's involved." "What money?" She gave him a look. "That woman's not just some lost senior. I looked her up. Her family's got serious wealth, investment firms, real estate, maybe even banks. If she remembers all that, they'll be protective." Malik stared at the photo again. He didn't look heroic. He looked tired, like a kid who had just finished a long day and still showed up anyway. He went to school the next day expecting it to die down. It didn't. Teachers stopped him in the halls. Strangers pulled him aside near the vending machines. A news crew even waited outside the building until the principal came out and told them to scram. By the time Friday rolled around, Malik had deleted most of his apps. Then came the letter, hand-delivered by a courier wearing a suit too stiff for this part of town. He knocked politely. Grandma answered. "Delivery for Malik Owens," the man said. Malik took the envelope. It was thick, the kind of paper that didn't bend easily. No return address, just his name in perfect black ink. Inside was a handwritten note. "Malik, I hope this isn't too strange. I may not remember every name or date, but I remember kindness. I remember your eyes when you looked at me. You didn't flinch. You didn't look through me like glass. You made me feel like I was still here. Please come visit me. I'd like to tell you something important. Margaret Whitaker." Attached was a business card. Whitaker Estate Trust, Senior Coordinator, Elise Harding, with a number and an address in the city's North End. Malik turned the card over. On the back, written in Margaret's shaky handwriting, was a single line. "You reminded me of someone I used to be." He held the card in both hands for a long time. Grandma walked in, drying a plate with a dish towel. "You gonna go?" "I think I have to," Malik said. Later that evening, he caught the N8 bus, then walked the last few blocks. The address led him to a large red brick estate, tucked behind hedges and a wrought iron gate. A woman in a navy suit greeted him by name at the front. "She's in the garden," the woman said. "She doesn't like walls too much these days." Malik followed the stone path through the side yard, past a fountain, until he found Margaret sitting on a wooden bench near a cluster of daffodils. She wore a soft blue sweater and beige slacks. Her hair was brushed, and a nurse sat quietly nearby, reading a book under a tree. Margaret looked up. "You came." "I did." She patted the bench. "Sit." He did. They were quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry if I've caused you trouble," she said. "You didn't. I wasn't always like that, lost." "I don't think you're lost now." She smiled softly. "I used to be sharp, ruthless, some would say. People respected me because I was powerful, not because I was kind. That night, you reminded me what it meant to simply be seen, with nothing in return." Malik said nothing. He didn't want to interrupt her. "I have something for you," she said, reaching into her sweater pocket. She pulled out a small, folded piece of paper and handed it to him. It wasn't a check. It wasn't money. It was a letter, addressed to her attorney, requesting a named education fund in Malik's honor, fully financed. "I don't need another estate," she said, "but I'd like to help build yours." Malik looked at the letter, then at her. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't. Just do something good with it." But what Margaret didn't tell him then was that this letter was only the beginning. The next surprise would come sooner than he thought. The following Monday, Malik sat at the kitchen table, turning the letter over and over in his hands. He'd already read it 6 times, but something about it didn't feel real yet. The idea that this stranger, this lost woman he found on a curb, was connected to a world he'd only seen on magazine covers. It was hard to wrap his head around. Finish your eggs, Grandma said, not even looking up from her crossword. I'm not hungry. You're not thinking straight on an empty stomach. That letter's not going anywhere. He took a bite, barely tasting it. Do you think this is real? I mean, really real? His grandma finally looked up. Boy, you rode a woman 5 miles on a beat-up bike and brought her home, wrapped in your hoodie. You didn't ask for anything. And now a woman with more money than the mayor wants to invest in your future. What part of that sounds fake? All of it. She smirked and went back to her puzzle. Eat. Later that day, a dark gray town car pulled up in front of their house. Out stepped a man in a navy suit, polished shoes, and a calm, expensive smile. He introduced himself as Alan Bremer, one of Margaret Whitaker's estate lawyers. He handed Grandma a folder. I'm here with Ms. Whitaker's permission. She insisted we deliver this in person. It contains the preliminary documents for the fund she's setting up in Malik's name. There's also a letter of recommendation for any college application he chooses to submit. Grandma opened the folder slowly. She said nothing, but her eyes narrowed at the zeros. Malik stood back, unsure what to say. I know this is overwhelming, Alan said, turning to Malik. But Ms. Whitaker doesn't give gifts lightly. She remembers what matters, even if her memory is fading. You mattered. How did you find us? Malik asked. Alan smiled. She didn't remember your address, but she remembered your kindness. That made it easy enough. Malik folded his arms. And what exactly does she want in return? Alan's smile faded slightly, replaced by something more sincere. Nothing. She doesn't have much time, Malik. She's had good people around her for years, but that night, she felt invisible. You made her feel human again. That hit something deep. Alan gave a polite nod and got back into the car, leaving them with the folder and a silence that filled the kitchen like fog. Malik sat back down and opened the last page. There it was. The Whitaker Foundation for Educational Equity, Malik Owens Scholar Grant, signed by Margaret herself. His grandma leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You thinking what I'm thinking? She said. That the universe is weird? That maybe this is exactly what you needed? And maybe what she needed too. That night, Malik Googled Margaret's name properly for the first time. She wasn't just rich. She was legacy rich, a former executive of one of the country's oldest private banks. She'd once been listed in Forbes. She sat on the boards of 3 universities and used to own property in 3 different states. But none of that had been in her eyes the night he met her. All he'd seen was a scared woman on a curb who no one would help. He closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair. She could have been anyone. Could have been homeless. Could have been dangerous. But she wasn't. And if he'd let the world's warnings talk him out of it, she'd still be out there. Or worse. And now here she was, changing his life. For what? A water bottle and a ride on his bike? No. For seeing her. For stopping when no one else would. But Malik still didn't know just how far her final gift would reach, or how his name would soon land in places he never expected to hear it. 3 weeks later, Malik's name was being spoken in places it had never been heard before. Newsrooms, classrooms, community centers, boardrooms. First came the local stations, then regional. Then someone from Good Morning America called his school principal. Malik didn't want any of that. He didn't like the way reporters twisted the story into something polished, something easy. They all wanted to make it feel like a fairy tale. Poor kid saves rich woman. But they were missing the point. He hadn't done it because of who she was. He'd done it because no one else had. And he never forgot that night. How quiet the street was. How unsure she looked. How it took less than a minute to decide that a stranger deserved to feel safe. One day, he got a call from a woman named Cheryl Danvers, the director of a nonprofit focused on youth leadership and urban scholarships. We saw what you did, she said over the phone. We want to give you a platform to talk about it, and we want to support whatever path you choose next. He didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to people offering help without a catch. Later that week, he stood on a stage in a community center on the east side of town. Around 50 people showed up, not because he was famous, because they were curious, because somehow his story had struck a nerve. He looked out over the small crowd and cleared his throat. I don't have much to say, he began, gripping the edge of the podium. I'm not a hero. I didn't do anything special. I saw someone sitting alone, and she looked scared. That's it. That's all. People nodded. He continued. If I'm being honest, I almost didn't stop. I was tired, hungry. I had homework. But I thought about my grandma. I thought about how I'd feel if someone saw her like that and just kept walking. He paused. So I stopped. I gave her water. I gave her my hoodie. I gave her a way home. And she gave me a reminder that the world still needs us to pay attention, not just to our screens or our own problems, to people. The room went quiet. Then came the applause, not explosive, but real. Afterward, a woman approached him with tears in her eyes. "My father's going through dementia," she said. "I pray someone like you sees him when he forgets where he is." That moment meant more than any scholarship letter. The following weekend, Malik was invited back to see Margaret. She was sitting in her sunroom this time, watching squirrels run across the backyard fence. "I heard you've been busy," she said, sipping tea slowly. Malik smiled. "So have you." She nodded. "I've been remembering more. Not all at once, but enough." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. "You changed my life," she said quietly. "You changed mine." "No," she corrected. "I gave you something, but you changed it. You could have taken what I gave you and disappeared, but instead, you used it to lift other people." He didn't know how to answer that. She reached over and handed him a new envelope, smaller this time. Inside was a note, written in shaky handwriting. "This is the last thing I'll give you, Malik. And it's the smallest thing, but maybe the most important. You don't owe me anything. You don't owe the world a performance. Just keep paying attention. The right moment will always find you. And when it does, act." He folded the note and tucked it into his wallet, right behind his bus pass. On the way home, he looked out the window as the bus rolled past the pharmacy, the same one where he found her. The sidewalk looked empty now, quiet, ordinary. But he knew better. That spot would always mean something to him, because that's where the world stopped pretending it didn't see and started paying attention. Months passed. Malik still had the same bike, still clocked hours at the Quick Mart after school, still kept to himself mostly. But something had changed, not around him, but in him. It wasn't the scholarship, or the press, or even the calls from colleges he once thought were out of reach. It was the way he saw people now. One night on his way home, he passed a man digging through a trash bin behind the Dollar Value store. The guy looked up, startled, expecting to be ignored, or worse. But Malik just nodded, didn't pity him, didn't pretend he wasn't there, just saw him. He didn't need to stop every time. He didn't need to save everyone. That wasn't the lesson. The lesson was, look, pay attention. Don't rush past people just because it's easy. He kept Margaret's final note in his wallet, wore it soft with rereading. Whenever the world started to feel cold again, or small, or too fast, he'd pull it out just for a second. And it helped. One afternoon, Malik visited Margaret again. Her memory was slipping more each time, but that didn't seem to bother her anymore. She had accepted it the way some people accept rain, uninvited, but not the end of the world. He found her in the garden, same spot, same bench. "You're the one who found me," she said, smiling faintly. "Aren't you?" He nodded. "Yeah, that was me." She looked out at the flowers. "I think about that night sometimes, not because I was scared, but because I was seen." He didn't know what to say to that, but she didn't need a reply. Before he left, she handed him a small envelope. Inside was a photo, old, faded, black and white. A girl on a bicycle, hair tied with a ribbon, laughing as her brother chased her down a gravel road. "That was me," she said, "a long time ago." Malik tucked it into his pocket. She passed away quietly 2 weeks later. The memorial was small, private, no media. Just a few friends, staff from the home, and her lawyer. Malik spoke for 3 minutes. He didn't talk about money or memory or the press. He told the story of the curb, the bike ride, the tea, the way she laughed when she said, "What's a peg?" Afterward, as he walked back to the bus stop, a little girl on a pink scooter fell near the curb, scraped her knee. Everyone else kept walking. Malik didn't. He knelt down, helped her up, and handed her a napkin from his pocket. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, holding back tears. Her mother came running over, thanking him. He said it was nothing, but he knew it wasn't. It never is. The truth is, most people walk past things that don't seem like their problem. We're all busy, distracted, nervous about getting involved. But sometimes, the difference between being lost and being found is one person who stops. Be that person, even when no one else does, especially when no one else does. If this story made you feel something, share it. Tell someone what you saw here. And next time, life gives you a choice between looking away or stepping in, choose to see. Because what you do when no one's watching, that's who you really are.